In this lesson, we'll be looking at the relationship between tourism and economic development. Tourism is a growth industry that many countries have been looking to as a potential future driver of their economic development. And in the age of automation, it may provide many jobs to places that are losing jobs to automation. So it's very important that we look at tourism as a potential driver of future economic growth throughout the world. And in this lesson, we'll be trying to answer the following questions. 1. How does tourism impact economies? 2. What is the economic potential of the travel industry? And 3. How can tourism lead to economic development? Now, throughout the world, tourism has an enormous economic impact. It's a fairly young industry. Really only in the 1960s do we see travel becoming accessible to the masses. So with only 5 or 6 decades of growth at hand, there's still much potential for future growth in this industry. Now, tourism can both help places by establishing stable economies, but it can also potentially hurt them by creating new economic challenges. Internationally, tourism generates a tremendous amount of wealth and employs an ever-increasing number of workers around the globe. But not only do we have people traveling between countries, we have the value of domestic tourism, or travel within a country. And by putting these two things together, we can see the total value of the industry. Clearly, travel and tourism has a large and growing place in the world economy. Now, every year, the travel and tourism industry generates millions of jobs, and the annual growth rate is several percent. We've been seeing this year over year. Capital investment in the travel and tourism industry is over $1 trillion per year. And as you can see in this image on the side here, there are many high-paying jobs, well-paying jobs that are associated with the travel and tourism industry. Now, we can think of tourist spending as a type of invisible export. It's income that's generated throughout tourism. It's invisible because no product is necessarily being sold. The product is the money that's being brought into a country. People are coming to the country and spending their money to experience something in that country, to experience a place, an environment, a culture, whatever it is that they're coming to experience. This is bringing money in that would not otherwise have been spent there. So there's potential economic growth here. And again, this is not necessarily a zero-sum game. Lots of countries can benefit from this in many ways. It's not necessarily that one country benefits at another's. If people are coming to visit my country, I might want to go visit their country later on. Now, wherever tourists spend money, there is an economic impact. And we can split these impacts into two different types. We have direct impacts. So the direct impacts of tourism are created by the dollars tourists spend for things such as airline tickets, hotels, meals, entrance fees to attractions, or buying souvenirs. So this is money that's directly being spent by tourists on things that they're buying and using on their trip. However, that's not the only economic value that's provided by the tourism industry. There are also many, many, many indirect impacts. These occur because of direct spending, but they're less easy to identify. For example, the airline that flies you to your destination must pay for fuel, purchase in-flight meals, maintain equipment, rent airport space, etc. So even though tourists are not directly spending their money on these things, they're fueling all these spin-off effects because of their initial investment. So we can think of this like the tip of the iceberg. There are all these direct impacts that the travel and tourism industry provides, things like transportation, accommodation, catering, entertainment, recreation, and other services. But beyond that, there are many, 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 many other services below the surface which are needed to support those industries, some which we might identify with the travel industry and others that aren't so obvious. So not only does the travel and tourism industry directly benefit itself, it also has these spin-off effects which benefit the economy as a whole. Now we can see other economic benefits from the tourism industry. Direct and indirect tourism spending leads to greater economic activity and jobs through something known as the multiplier effect. This is the idea of rounds of re-spending that increase the total economic activity. The greater the amount of money kept by the local economy, the greater the re-spending and the greater the multiplier effect. So the idea here is that you're spending money in an area and that money is essentially being reinvested in that area. People there have more money, they can spend more, and it's creating more and more investment. Those tourist destinations that are the most self-sufficient That is, those that are able to supply the most of their own goods and services have the greatest multiplier effects. So if you're a resort and you're selling everything to people, you're an all-inclusive resort and you supply the food, the beverage, the accommodations, you're keeping all that money in-house and you're able to then reinvest that into maintaining your hotel, to buying better supplies, etc., etc., etc. You can pay your employees better. You can hire more workers. All these multiplier effects that we get out of it that then spur off into the local economy. However, the opposite can be true as well if places are not self-sufficient. So due to foreign ownerships and the nature of the global economy, not all money stays in a region. So we have this idea of leakages. This is money that leaves the local economy and reduces economic impacts. So for example, if I'm traveling to another country and I'm staying in an American-owned hotel in the Caribbean, even though I'm taking my vacation to the Caribbean, because I'm staying in that American-owned hotel, some of those profits go back to the United States. Yeah, the people who work in the hotel, they're making some money off of this, and the products that the hotel supplies, maybe they're sourcing them locally, but at the end of the day, that hotel is trying to make a profit. So in order to pay their shareholders, that money is leaking out of the local economy. This is what a leakage refers to. Now, tourism also has a potential for revitalizing stagnant economies. We look at this quote here. Some communities look to tourism to avoid the elephant burial ground syndrome, places where the young leave and the old return to die. So we see that tourism has the potential to revitalize the economies of places with aging populations or post-industrial towns by providing new job opportunities and bringing new investment to places. The places where all the jobs have dried up, maybe it relied a lot on a certain resource, might have been a factory town and the factories moved away. Whatever it is, those jobs have dried up. Tourism might be a way of replacing lots of those old jobs because the factories shut down, because jobs have been outsourced, or because of automation, because the town itself, because it's been aging. This is a way of bringing new money and new people into the area. So in summary, the travel industry is one of the fastest growing sectors of the global economy as it generates over $1 trillion in spending every year. The economic value of tourism is seen both in direct and indirect impacts. An investment in the travel industry can have multiplier effects and has the potential to revitalize otherwise stagnant economies.